Hey everybody, this is week 14 with Transcribers, and I'm Carter, and this week we're going to be talking about the workplace, because Todd is also actually in school, so he's not working full-time anywhere at the moment. I'm also going to talk a little bit about his school environment, because it's kind of his workplace at the moment. As far as, is he out in his workplace? Well, he was working actually at a job until he came out. And the events were unrelated, but so he hasn't actually been in a job environment since he came out. And as far as, is he out at school, I guess it's kind of a yes and no. He was able to get his name legally changed, and so he was able to do all that with the registrar's office. I still think his old picture from his ID was associated to even his new name in like the system that the university uses. So some of the teachers had the old picture at first. One lady even asked him, like, is that your sister? And I think that was not in a class. But so it's kind of like a yes and no. It's not something that he certainly announces to anybody or necessarily feels that they need to know. He's male, period. And that's all he wants anyone to know, is that he's male, and that because he wants to be recognized as such. Now, he has had the fortunate experience of meeting an actual trans professor here at the university. She is a male to female, and she is actually in the engineering department, and he is in one of her classes this semester. And so we know her personally, and so yes, he is out to her, and it's been really nice. She can, is really understanding, of course, where some people might not be. So am I out at work as far as, do they know that he's transgendered? And no. In my former job, I had a job for 4 years that I was laid off in February, and they didn't even know that, and this was before he came out, but they didn't know we were in a relationship in the first place. And part of that is because we're in the Deep South, and any kind of non-everyday heterosexual relationship is seen as strange. So at that point, we would have been a lesbian relationship, and we didn't tell anybody. So since his coming out, I was unemployed for a little while, but just recently kind of got a job here in town, and just recently went full time, and have just sort of even broken the news that my roommate is my boyfriend, and all they know of him is male. So, I don't intend on telling them. First of all, it's none of their business. Second of all, they are all very conservative. I don't want to say closed-minded, because I don't know how they take to the news necessarily, but it's something that's very beyond their world. They are very small world, small-minded, and I don't think that would go well. But again, even beyond that, it's simply about, it's kind of none of their business, and as far as we're concerned, he's male, and that's all anybody else needs to know. So is my boyfriend, Todd, protected by any policies? And I wanted to talk about this because, like I said, he's not in the workplace, but the university actually as a whole entity has been extremely kind and helpful in this scenario. And I want to talk about, kind of tread lightly on this topic, because I certainly don't want to offend anybody, but he has found solace through the Department of Disability. Now, of course, being transgendered is not a disability, but when he was talking to someone about how he needed to go about changing his name, getting all of this updated, it was recommended that he could find solace there, because it is a protected class there, where it's not anywhere else, especially in Alabama. So he's got an advisor there who has been extremely helpful. She said, she even had a friend and knew someone who transitioned, that if he ever felt discriminated against, or, like anything was fishy, or he was being treated differently for any reason, to let her know that he was protected, and that they would make sure of that. So that has been a real blessing to find, and like I said, of course, the individual experiences with certain professors or whatnot may vary. He does have a professor now that he had a prior semester. Who knows if that professor has put 2 and 2 together, but he definitely feels like he's being treated differently. And not like blatantly wrong, but differently, noticeably differently, since, like I said, he had that professor before. I think he mentioned an experience where beforehand, when people would come in late to this professor's class, she would just call him out, and I think partly in a joking manner. But he said one day he came into late class, and he just kind of got an evil stare down. So, and I think there have been some other things, but that was just one example. And I kind of mentioned this, but one of the questions is, how important do we feel it is for trans men to disclose at work? Again, I think this is a very personal question, and a lot of it depends on maybe how far along in your transition are you? You know, do your records have your new masculine name or even the gender represented on your ID now? Because if so, then, you know, you don't have to explain anything to anyone. There's no question. But, you know, if you're kind of in that in between and maybe you don't have your name legally changed or your sex changed on your ID or anything, then, you know, sometimes you may have to answer, especially when, like, getting a new job. I know that's complicated. And so in that case, you may have to reveal, you know, what's going on to someone just to kind of throw it out there on the table, because you certainly don't want to walk into a place, you know, only to be discriminated against. So there is kind of that feeling of maybe you need to tell whoever hired you or who's doing the HR at the moment. And if they're not okay with it, you know, why enter into that relationship in the first place? But I think Todd and I don't necessarily feel the need to disclose to people, hey, I'm trans, you know. Like, I don't walk up to people and say, hey, I'm Carter and I'm not trans. So there's really no need for him to do the other. We just really are introducing him as Nick, you know, anyone who doesn't know otherwise, or Todd, whichever. And even within our friends, you know, it was kind of a need-to-know basis. Like, we went to Wyoming and we stayed with my friend Edward. And Edward had never met Todd one way or the other, period. So we just introduced Todd as Todd. But, you know, with our friends who knew and would probably recognize him and stuff, of course, you know, we explained to them what was going on. And my boyfriend doesn't have insurance through his workplace. He does have some personal insurance with, like, an individual blue plan in Alabama, and they do not cover anything related to transgender. They are very specific about it. In fact, he gets his tea through Stroheckers completely off of insurance. Plus, I think the insurance he has states they do not cover compounds, which he is, I guess. So that's kind of how we feel about disclosure and workplace. Like I said, we're certainly out to anyone that matters, but anyone who doesn't know and has no personal business knowing at all whatsoever, he is who he is, and he is Todd, and he is male, and that's all anybody else needs to know. So, I hope that you all are doing well. Happy Labor Day weekend. Sorry I'm a little late yesterday. I kind of forgot it was Sunday since I had today off too. But I hope you're all having a great week and continue to do so, and we'll see you next week.